Hello, Sagittarius. Thank you so much, as always, you guys, for being here. And a very safe and happy holidays to all of you. All right, Sagittarius. So, looking at your third week of December, you pulled Time to Go, Destiny, and Barriers. This is going to be for those of you who have had a life experience that taught you to put walls up. But the message here is that there's nothing left to be learned from that experience, that it's time to let that go, because the barriers that are in place now may be blocking the healing that you need. So, time to go. This talks about endings, completion, and walking away from something because there is nothing else to learn or experience. And the protection message is interesting because it actually talks about your destiny. And then, that's what you ended up pulling. It says, even if it appears that you've reached the end of the line and all is lost, it isn't. You're in a situation that will resurface again later, so consider this a break rather than an ending. Destiny is in charge here. You lose nothing and gain everything when you surrender to that fact. And it's talking about how, your small self may have doubts, but that's natural. But it also says Spirit loves you, trust that. So with that, it's a beautiful message, but it really points to the fact that you may have experienced something that made you question that. And again, that's where barriers is coming up. But destiny is talking about you daring to have life the way that you choose. It's about taking a risk. And for some of you, the risk there may be letting the wall down. But it's also talking about, what sacrifices are you willing to make to have the life that you want? And again, it all goes back to some of you having an experience that, put the walls up. So barriers, it says you have created barriers or defense mechanisms that may be preventing emotional or mental healing. The universe is eagerly waiting and willing to assist you with your healing, but you may not be receiving the healing you desire. Something seems to be blocking or hindering your restoration. And it talks about how the obstacle may be a protective measure, and it makes sense that that was something that you had to put up to prevent any further harm, but it may be blocking out, the healing that you're needing. It's almost like the lesson that I've learned from this experience is to never have this experience again. So I need to always protect myself, but that's basically putting a message out to the universe that you're expecting to have to deal with something like that again. When, the point there is to show you the contrast, but then also for you to heal from that experience. It very much reminds me of, from the Dark Mirror, Fated to Suffer. But again, this is realizing that there really is nothing else to be learned from a difficult or painful experience. And again, the barriers or the defense mechanisms that you've put up may be blocking out exactly what you're wanting. And, that could be a material want that you feel like is going to create the kind of healing that you're wanting. But it's healing, period. But the barrier is blocking out any attempt to, correct the pain that you may still be holding on to from an experience that has put you on the defense, right? Yeah, you're overall the 10 of Wands, so carrying a burden. I've always said with this one, there seems to be a destination, and my question then is, where do you think you need to be, or what do you think needs to happen before you're able to let all that go, right? So you're talking about letting go of burdens and ending that cycle. So it's really about what is it that you're carrying that's weighing you down. Now, for some of you, it very simply is you have a lot to deal with and you can't just drop things right now, right? But you want to get rid of that feeling of burdens. So the hangman in the past, I look at this and I think that, whatever you were dealing with, it just wasn't going anywhere, right? You're talking about a state of limbo. But it's because of a situation not moving forward that you start to look at things differently. So with the hangman, and again, right, like the sacrifice, and that's letting something go, and I go back to time to go. But whatever you were dealing with, it puts you in a state where things just kind of get put on hold. And I have to wonder with the Ten of Wands if that doesn't create, a bunch of burdens that you end up carrying with you. But you're still coming into this with a different perspective. In the present, the Three of Pentacles. So the change of perspective, I think, may be shifting your focus on how you are working towards something. With the Three of Pentacles, you could be talking about a project that you're working on, practical plans for your future in general, right? And there may be, the collaboration that's going on there. But I look at this and think, we're kind of starting over, but not completely from scratch. It's like we're beginning again, but the perspective that's been gained from the past is changing the way that you're doing things. So we'll see what's going on here. But my only problem with this is that there's still this burden that's being carried. Future conditions, the Queen of Cups. So, talking about working with someone. In future conditions, you may be laying out plans with a person who has the ability to kind of show you what you're feeling. Because I look at her and she's the mirror, right? Like that to me is the most important part of the Queen of Cups, is her ability to reflect back to others what they're feeling. But you could be talking about somebody who cares about you and the plans that you're working on. There may be a want to, be a part of that. But there may be some things that, are weighing on you that may be preventing you from seeing something through. But, there's an attempt here to do things differently because of a change in perspective. Now, for some of you, it's you becoming more aware of how your emotional state is being reflected back to you, if that makes sense. But this is like opening up your heart again. It's being willing to feel, where I think for some of you, there may have been like this block, and again, right, like this barrier to your ability to feel something about what you're working on or what your plans are. But, again, this could have to do, with another person that's kind of opening you up to some emotions that you may have been closed off to. Your best path to follow the star. So, hope and healing, right? Healing the damage that may have been caused by a situation. I mean, you're coming into this at least with a sense of wisdom, in that you were able to change your perspective. Some of you may be changing your plans in terms of your career. But, this, besides hope and healing, is really, seeing the bigger picture, the bigger goal, the bigger dream. But, again, with the Ten of Wands being the overall, it's really about needing to let go of any kind of emotional burdens, I feel like, that may have been blocking you from wanting to continue to work towards something. But I think that it has to do with like finding the right person to work with. But I also feel like, if you're talking about working with another person here, because it's the Queen of Cups, it's really about working with somebody who understands the things that you're carrying around, but has the ability to have compassion for you in that. But there still needs to be, this healing that needs to happen in order for you to, really see the full bigger picture on your goals, your plans, what you're working on here, right? In your environment, the Two of Wands. So if we're talking about, things being held up, it may have been out of your hands with the Hangman. But then I also look at this and think that, there are things that may have been stopping you from making a choice to act on, working on a goal or a plan or a project, whatever it may be with that Three of Pentacles. But another person being involved seems to be important. And not only that, but the emotional support that you're getting. But in a way where it shows you exactly what you're feeling. But this is like making the choice to take some action here to kind of like, do things a little bit differently. And again, I say that because you're coming in with a different perspective on the Hangman. But you may have been like sacrificing, like wanting to do something because of what you're carrying. And now, right, you're looking at, like, I don't feel like an urgency, but more of a, if not now, when? Like, it's either now or never type of feeling. So some of you may be in the process of making a choice to kind of like restart something. But again, with three, we're not starting from scratch here. You're just doing things differently than what you have before. Your hopes and your fears, the Ten of Pentacles, makes sense, right? Like, so long-term security and stability. And not only that, but the legacy that you're leaving behind. But this could also be, the support of family, right? So it could be somebody within the family. But besides that, the hope there would be that this is eventually going to turn into something that is long-term and sustainable in your life. But it's also something that you may be passing on to somebody else. But I like that the focus is there in terms of the hope, the bigger picture, right? And that, I think, is what you need to remain focused on. Not necessarily the burdens that, have been left to you based on, this situation not exactly moving anywhere in the past. But it all has to do with perspective, but I think emotional perspective. And then coming out the Hierophant. So, when I look at the Hierophant and I think about the difficult changes, immediately there's this want to have some kind of grounded, practical, spiritual understanding of the difficulties that were faced. But this could be opening up to spirituality in a way that may help you with what you are planning or what your goals are for your long-term future. And it may be through that and, this emotional connection with possibly a spiritual teacher that is helping to release any kind of burdens that you're carrying. But the Hierophant, though, too, you're talking about, it feels constricted sometimes because you're talking about conformity. So, it may be that there's a realization, I think, coming through that you may have been too rigid in the way that you perceived things. And that may have created, you know, these burdens that you're choosing to carry. But I'm still looking at this as this is based on all the experience that you've had up to this point. You know, if this is about a relationship, it's really about whether or not the both of you are working toward the same goal. And, you know, is this where you want to take action? But again, right, like the advice is to make sure that you're focusing on what the long term is. But the Hierophant, right, like conformity, it's dogma, there's a set way of doing things. But, you know, is it time for you to kind of like look outside the box? If your emotions are being reflected back to you, is it showing any kind of like rigidity in what you choose to do? But this is a major commitment though too. And then, you know, there's that knowledge that comes with that though too. The Eight of Pentacles, okay, so a lot of effort was put into whatever you were dealing with. And again, right, we're not starting from scratch here, but things are being done differently. Different plans, I think, are being laid out. The Two of Swords, okay. And then you have the Chariot, which is really good to see. So now looking at this in context with the Hierophant, this is where I think, you know, when you're talking about the decisions that you're making, there are some things you may not have been seeing or, you know, refusing to see that has been preventing you from making a choice. You know, for some of you, it almost has like an Eight of Swords type of feel. And, you know, that has to do with this blindfold and this like unwillingness to see something. You know, this is not wanting to make a choice or indecision, but it's also realizing that a difficult choice may have to be made. And that may come from this understanding that there's too much of, you know, in the box type of thinking. But with the Chariot here, you have, you know, this victory, this movement forward, and this control over opposing forces within you, right? So with the Eight of Pentacles, again, we're talking about a lot of hard work and effort being put into something. And if it's been stagnant, then, you know, I can understand why there's this like going back to the Three of Pentacles. But again, right, it has to do with the perspective that has changed because of things not moving forward. But things have built up in such a way where, you know, there's this need to release the heavy burdens that may be weighing on you. Now, decisions, right? There may be things that you are going to see about yourself reflected back to you. That's what I want to say. And that may come through a person, but this person is going to have compassion and understanding for why. But this is a time now for you to see that and make the difficult choice. And it may have to do with cutting certain things out of your life that are creating burdens, so that there is a like freedom to make a different choice to act here. And then, you know, again with the Chariot and the Queen of Cups and leading out here, this is where there is the opportunity here for you to get control over what is going on and start getting some momentum forward. There's also the major victory that happens here, but it's really about the control over the opposing forces that are going on within you. Your emotions may be telling you something completely different than what you believe to be true. And with the Hierophant, right, it becomes a restriction almost. But once you're able to kind of like break free from that, there's this freedom of moving forward. But there are some things that you're going to have to look at and you're going to have to see. Because otherwise there's, you know, the potential here for wasted effort in something. And I only say that because of the Hangman being the past. But I do like the Chariot, especially with the Ten of Wands being the overall here. So the focus here is looking at the bigger picture and what you actually see for, you know, your long-term future, right? Trust. Transformation. And truth. So trusting in the transformation that is taking place and being more at home with a sense of truth, if that makes sense. It's like trusting the truth that, you know, you are living from, but it's coming from a place that's different than where you were before, right? So trusting the transformation process, definitely. A wandering path, enjoy the journey, right? It's never a straight path. And then miracles, expect the wonders to emerge. I like the reading. It feels very nuanced, and a lot of it feels very specific. But I really think that there are some things that are going to be reflected back to you. Especially, you know, as far as how you have been feeling about what your goals actually are, what you are putting your time and effort into with that Three of Pentacles. But something may be blocking you from making a choice to act, and I think that that's where you're going to have to take a really hard look at that. And, you know, again, it's time to kind of let that go, right? And the Hierophant, it really depends on how you see that. You know, it could be this spiritual understanding of why these burdens are still with you, but there may also be this understanding that you may have been closed off to a different viewpoint. But you're going to be restarting something here, and again, it's like not from scratch, but the plans are going to be a little bit different. Just, you know, make sure that whatever healing needs to take place, that, you know, that's the first priority. That's what I feel like with the Star. But also, you know, have hope. Have hope in the vision of the future that you are seeing for yourself.